I don't really know where the question's kind of coming from. I know he's got a year left on his contract. Maybe that's part of the reason. But the randomness of it all makes me wonder if somebody's hearing something.
The Lightning are out, famously, as the Panthers have advanced to play the Carolina Hurricanes in what will be the Panthers have gone to face the winner of the Battle of Ontario, I should say. Capitals playing the Hurricanes. There's that. But with the Lightning out, many are asking, is Jon Cooper also out? This was his 12th season with the team and third straight year in which the Lightning have been eliminated in the first round. Yes, the 3 before that all ended in the Stanley Cup final. They won 2 of those. But Jon Cooper has now coached 12 seasons for the Lightning, which is crazy. Bless you, Sean. He's 57 years young, 12 seasons with the team, has 1 more year on his contract. He's signed through next season, and speculation abound on his future. Would there be a parting of the ways? Would he want to leave? Would the Lightning want to leave? Would maybe he take a year off? Greg Wyshynski asked yesterday on the sheet, or 2 days ago on the sheet, and say maybe go work for his friend Ryan Smith in Utah. Lots of questions about the future of Jon Cooper. Pete, I'm a big ask the question guy, but do you think it's a good question right now, or do you think that this makes no sense for either one to want?
I'm surprised by it all. I'm very surprised by it all. I would not throw Jon Cooper into like the top 5 reasons that the Lightning lost that series, especially after they finished the regular season as arguably the best team in the Eastern Conference. So I don't really know where the question's kind of coming from. I know he's got a year left on his contract. Maybe that's part of the reason, but the randomness of it all makes me wonder if somebody's hearing something. You know, like when a question like that comes out of nowhere, you're like, it had to come from somewhere, and it probably wasn't just some dumb idiot asking a question.
You might forget this. Petey was saying it on our show early in the season.
Before the
season. He said, who's the first coach to get fired? And he was like, don't rule out Jon Cooper. And we said,
what?
We will rule out Jon Cooper. And now here we are at the end of the year asking that same old question. You say it's coming from somewhere. Maybe it's a negotiating ploy for Jon Cooper.
Yeah.
He's tight with Brisebois. They work great together, but maybe he's saying to ownership, I pay me like the best coach in the NHL because I think that I am. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's you get this murmur out there that what would happen if he's gone? There's a bajillion head coaching vacancies. So many of these teams would trip over their you-know-whats to get him. Maybe it's just a negotiating ploy. Sean, you got something?
Well, I don't want to move too far away from Cooper. I just don't like that this conversation is centered around him going to Utah.
I don't like that
that
either.
means it's replacing Bear. I mean, Bear has just been such a good coach for that team, has gotten them to, I think, perform above expectations, like year in and year out. So if it's to replace him in that sense, I also saw, I think Dacky in the chat see something about him going to management. Certainly don't want him replacing BA. I think BA has put that franchise in a terrific position. So I don't like the fact that he's being tied to Utah, unless it's more of like a above BA hockey ops. Like if he wants to move out from behind the bench, different story. But I just don't like the Utah of it all. That's all.
Let me give you the.
I want to see Bear get his fair shake.
I think he
Definitely.
deserves it.
He's a big part of that. Let me give you the coaching vacancies. You got the Bruins, you got the Ducks, you got the Rangers, you got the Kraken, you got the Flyers, you got the Blackhawks, you got the Penguins, and as of a couple of days ago, do you folks know this? You got the Vancouver Canucks. If he is to leave, and I'm assuming that if he left Tampa, it would be in some sort of actual mutual parting of the ways. I don't think that you fire Jon Cooper. Are any of those teams super tantalizing to him? I think we can assume that the Rangers are going to throw a huge bag at Mike Sullivan. So maybe that job ends up being taken anyway. I don't know, like Ducks would be a lot of fun for Cooper. He goes from one market that isn't super crazy, but with a really good team, to a team that maybe could eventually get there and also doesn't have the biggest light on it. Ducks could be a lot of fun, but Blackhawks, pressure cooker. Canucks, that's close to home. He's from BC. Pressure cooker. Kraken, meh. Flyers, meh and pressure cooker. Bruins, I need a different term. Pressure cooker. I don't want to keep saying that, but like, what's that?
I just don't see it.
Yeah.
Why would you, at this point, go from Tampa to Boston?
I think if anything, it's the year off. I think he stays in Tampa
But
or he takes a year.
Bruins can't wait a year. That's like they're not going to wait a year to find their coach.
No. I'm saying that Cooper either stays in Tampa or he takes a year off, meaning he doesn't go to any of these teams.
Yeah,
and he sees what ends up popping up next year. Because if you were to say to Jon Cooper and he's thinking of going somewhere else, if you take a year off, the Ducks, Bruins, Rangers, Flyers, Kraken, Blackhawks, and Penguins and Canucks are all going to get filled. He would say, okay, I don't want to go to any of those teams.
Yeah, well, he would also still be getting paid, and he could do like TV.
I know we've had this conversation briefly before. A couple of people in the chat have suggested him going to LA. Do you think there's any playoff teams that are going to fire their coach?
Ooh, I think Jim Hiller would be a candidate to get fired. I don't know if the Kings would actually pull the trigger, but if anybody has made a case to be fired in the first round, it would be Jim Hiller.
And I also think Cooper being available changes the math on that a little bit, where if you feel confident you can get Cooper, easier fire.
I would like Jon Cooper in LA.
And if I were Cooper, I would love the Kings. If I were Cooper, I'd like the Kings or the Ducks. Those would probably be the top two teams on my list if the LA job opens up.
He's also like, as we saw in this series, he's a little Hollywood. Like him being in LA would be fun, just from a personality perspective.
It's a good point in chat. He works in a tax-free state.
Mm-hmm.
So
DeBoer, if he chokes away this series,
famously, there are taxes in California.
DeBoer?
Yeah.
I mean,
I was just going to another tax-free state.
I get it, but like if DeBoer loses a series, it's going to be in a game 7, and would anybody really hold that?
I mean, it's going to be in a game 7 after losing 2 straight to the. I don't think it would necessarily be. I think it'd be more a product of the fact that it's a little bit of a Brindamore thing, where it's just like year after year, you just haven't been able to get over like the hump.
But I think that it would be a stretch to think that DeBoer gets fired after this, especially when he's kind of outcoached Bednar in this.
I literally only brought up DeBoer because of the tax-free aspect of it.
But. Here's a good one. This is crazy, but. I was wondering, I think, Pete, you sent a text about this early in the series. Is there any way if the Oilers flame out, would they move on from Chris Knobloch? Jon Cooper, head coach of the Edmonton Oilers. You go from Stamkos and Hedman and Kucherov to Draisaitl in one more year of McDavid before he goes to Philadelphia and Bouchard long-term. Emberson's been signed back up. Pickard has a few more years left in him.
If I'm Jon Cooper, I am not going to that franchise unless I know Connor McDavid is there for the foreseeable future. And I know people weren't happy about that conversation, but the fact of the matter is he is not contractually obligated currently to the Oilers for the foreseeable future.
And also the Oilers were looking for an excuse to hire Chris Knobloch.
Well, that's the other thing. Like, that's the other part of that math is like if you want to keep Connor McDavid and he is still gung-ho about Knobloch, you can't really fire that guy.
Yeah. I'll say this. We discussed, I think Pete said, if Cooper takes a year off, he can catch his breath, do TV. If Jim Hiller is to, we'll say, have to take a year off, do podcast. We got a spot for you, buddy.
Coop taking a year off would be perfect for a couple of reasons. Because A, if you're Utah and you really want him, like you give... Like, it's perfect because if Barra doesn't make the playoffs with Utah next year, I think it's understandable to want to move on. Mm-hmm. And as a Buffalo Sabres fan, if the Sabres don't make the playoffs next year,
he's not going to Buffalo.
Au revoir.
Here's a good one. I got my See You Doing Front Flip says, no, he does go to Philly to begin the McDavid process. And everyone says in that moment, why are you going to the Flyers? Michkov, yeah, sure. It's the beginning of we're building it for McDavid.
I mean, we're all of the belief that Rick Tocchet is like a foregone conclusion for Philly, right?
I'm lightly penciling in Tocchet to Philly and Sullivan to the Rangers.
I mean, the only thing that makes me hesitant about Tocchet to Philly is what Petey said the other day, that he just doesn't think that Tocchet has any interest in coaching a team like that right now, which completely makes sense to me. Like if he's a year removed from being one of the best teams in the Western Conference.
No coach would actually say though that they didn't have interest in coaching that team.
No, it's never happened before.
Never. Definitely not on the record.
Definitely not recently.
We all silly like the mayor.